So a deck I feel is honestly highly underrated yet overshadowed by Altergeist is Paleozoic Frogs. This deck is honestly very powerful still, setting 4 to 5 cards turn 1 is honestly no joke. Not only that, but this deck is very good when it comes to floodgating out your opponent. The deck enables you to use trap cards that are generically good, like an MST, a Book of Moon, etc., and use those cards as monsters. So even though you're setting 5 traps, any Paleozoic cards which again are generically good are also monsters that you can use later on. As well, let's not forget that Totally Awesome is one of the most powerful boss monsters of all time. So in today's video, I'm going to go over my competitive Paleozoic Frogs deck profile and give you guys an idea of what this deck can do. I want to first discuss Totally Awesome because every deck needs to have a game plan. As a wise man once said, stick to the game plan, as he revealed 3 copies of Heavy Metal Foes Electromite in his extra deck. Totally Awesome's effect is as follows. 2 level 2 Aqua type monsters. Once per turn during the standby phase, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card. Special summon 1 frog monster from your deck. Once per turn during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell/trap or monster effect, you can send 1 Aqua type monster from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then you can set it to your field. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 water monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This card is amazing. To start off with the obvious, it can negate a spell/trap or monster effect. You can never underestimate these types of effects on monsters, as there are so many good monsters with this effect. Sure, you have to send an Aqua type monster from your hand or field, but at the same time, negations are so powerful, especially on a card that's so easy to summon. But it can as well set cards to your field. Sure, maybe you can't set Link monsters, but what happens when your opponent plays Raigeki and you negate with Totally Awesome? You basically get a free Raigeki. As well, when Totally Awesome is sent to the graveyard, you can recur any water monster in your graveyard. But all of this nonsense doesn't stop there. During the standby phase, you can easily detach 1 Xyz material in order to special summon any frog monster from your deck. And even though in virtually every frog list we're only playing 2 different frog monsters, those 2 frog monsters are incredibly powerful. Speaking of these frog monsters, starting off with the main deck, we have the frogs. This lineup includes 3 copies of Swap Frog, 3 copies of Dupe Frog, and technically Frog Support, 2 copies of Ronin Totem. This is the most standard lineup of frogs you will get. Swap Frog is absolutely amazing at giving the deck a play turn 1 instead of setting your entire hand. As well, it can set up for the following turn to make a Totally Awesome. It, long story short, can send any level 2 or lower Aqua type monster from the deck to the graveyard. It can also return any monster to the hand to gain an additional normal summon of a frog monster, except Swap Frog. The main target to send for Swap Frog is Ronin Totem. Its ability to banish any frog monster from the graveyard to special summon itself from the graveyard, which may I add isn't a hard once per turn, means you can not only spam Totally Awesome, but then climb your way into some powerful Link monsters. Dupe Frog is the monster of the deck that you can't tell is good initially, so in theory this card sounds bad. However, in practice everything changes about it. Being able to special summon this card with Totally Awesome is amazing. This card can not only protect your Toad from battle with its effect that monsters your opponent controls can only attack Dupe Frog, but can also be sent to the graveyard for Totally Awesome's negate effect. When it is sent from the field to the graveyard as well, it can get a search for any frog monster, specifically in this deck, Swap Frog. However, keep in mind, as this card is from the 5Ds era of Yu-Gi-Oh! What this means is that this card will miss timing because it's a when effect. If you guys want an explanation of what when effects are and the difference between when and if effects, comment down below. Something like this is incredibly important to know. In this case, let's just say the main point is this effect will go off when it's destroyed by battle. And that's it for the monsters. Compared to most decks these days, you want to play hand traps. However, I'm not playing them in this deck because instead I'm playing 3 copies of Card of Demise. Card of Demise is an incredible starting card, enabling you to draw usually 3 cards. I don't play hand traps instead of this, however, because I want to floodgate out my opponent instead. Card of Demise is really good in some stun decks, and this happens to be one of those decks. And that's it as well for the spells. So as you can tell now, we're playing 29 traps. The only real hand trap I play is Infinite Impermanence. This card is amazing in this deck because, well, it's a trap, but you can also activate it from the hand. So we have to play it. Before we get into the Paleozoic portion of this deck, let me preface this portion by saying all Paleozoic traps have the following effect. Once per chain, when a trap card is activated while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card as a normal monster. Aqua, Water, level 2, attack 1200, defense 0. This card is not treated as a trap. If summoned this way, this card is unaffected by monster effects. Also banish it when it leaves the field. This is how your trap cards turn into monsters. For the Paleozoic lineup, I played 3 Canadia, 3 Oleanoids, 2 Morella, 1 Dinomischus, and 1 Leancoila. So I'll go over these guys real quick since they are pretty simple. Even though they're simple, they're good because they are also Paleozoic monsters, which is why you played them over something else. Canadia is a Book of Moon, which is amazing. Oleanoids is a Mystical Space Typhon, which is also amazing. Morella is good because it lets you dump itself into the graveyard to summon more Paleozoics later on, as well another trap which we'll get to later. Dinomischus is the only debatable one. Banishing a face-up card your opponent controls is obviously really good, but when you're trying to set your entire hand, it's hard to manage discarding a card. However, it's not always impossible to discard a card. Drawing a Ronin Totem is a good example of discard fodder, so overall, it personally could use more testing, but I think it's pretty decent at 1. It's searchable as well. I do honestly hate the idea of playing one-ofs unless it's searchable, so as this card is searchable, it's not bad. Finally, Leancoila is good later in the game in unison with an Xyz monster called Obabinya, to not only trigger more Paleozoics in the grave, but as well can add more fodder for Ronin Totem. For the Floodgates, which I played 9 of, I played 3 Rivalry of the Warlords, 3 Gozen Match, and 3 Anti-Spell Fragrance. Rivalry and Gozen Match automatically kill Goki, which is really good for this deck. However, Anti-Spell is replaceable by a trap card known as Mistake. It's up to personal preference, but in theory, Mistake can be better in more matchups. Anti-Spell is really good at slowing your opponent down, but Mistake can stop your opponent entirely. The last 3 traps I play are Solemn Strike at 3 copies of Lost Wind, and 1 Imperial Order. Solemn Strike and Imperial Order are amazing trap cards. I don't play a full Solemn Brigade, however, which would include Warning and Judgment, as I feel Strike is just the best counter trap for its slot. As well, I don't want to pay all the life points. Imperial Order is obviously game deciding at times, as your opponent can't fully play, while you are gaining a lot of advantage with your other cards. And Lost Wind is absolutely amazing in this deck, acting as attack reduction, effect negation, and even after that, it can set itself back to the field when your opponent would special summon a monster from the extra deck. Overall, this is the best deck for this card, and is an automatic 3-of in this deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we have 3 totally awesome, no surprise there as I explained earlier. I also play 1 Paleozoic Obabinya and 1 Paleozoic ANOMALOCARIS. Both of these monsters are unaffected by monster effects like the traps when they become monsters, but as well can do some cool stuff. Obabinya enables you to search any trap from the deck, as well it enables you to activate them immediately from the hand. ANOMALOCARIS is the other Paleozoic Xyz and is quite powerful. This card is absolutely absurd. The main effect is its Trident-like pop. However, because this card is unaffected by monster effects, it makes it incredibly annoying to deal with. The last card that's essential to Paleozoic is indeed the Starboy. This Link monster is probably the best support this deck could have gotten in the Link era. Even though it doesn't seem like it does much, the fact that it boosts attack is absolutely incredible. Totally Awesome is a monster with only 2200 attack, so being able to increase that is really powerful for getting over more monsters. Not to mention it can float super easily when it's destroyed by battle or card effect. Both arrows pointing down is obviously the main reason you play this card, but having extra benefits is nice too. One redeeming quality about it in this deck is that it's a water aqua monster, meaning you can use it while under any floodgate in your deck. By far a staple 2 to 3 of. However, I play 2 copies as I feel you don't really need the third. And really, that's about it. I always like to leave the side deck for personal preference, and the rest of the extra deck is up to you. I just put in a Link toolbox just because, but I usually don't go into them except Borosword and Boroload, as they're both absolutely amazing Link monsters. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I thought this deck was really fun to playtest, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. However, this is not the end-all be-all. If you guys have any suggestions, comment them down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, as it helps the channel out a lot. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.